What's up, friends? I know we just had a great weekend because we found out that we're not going to have to deal with the stupid idiot in the White House, and that's not going to cloud maybe our everyday freaking thoughts, And it's been a while since I last released an episode. Got a little busy, obviously a lot of things were happening in the world, and I also started a new job. Exciting, but as a result, I'm going to be a little bit busier, which is why I haven't released a podcast in a while. But I do have a new episode for you guys today, which is fun, and oh man, I'm just really, really glad. It felt like a weight lifting off of our shoulders when we found out the results on Saturday, and man, I hope you guys are doing great, and I hope you guys are holding up and still knowing that, there's obviously lots more to be done, whatever that might mean to you. But we've got the momentum, honey buns. That's my new motto. I was doing a lot of fun podcasts out there. I got to do Asian Boss Girl, which was a lot of fun. I got to do Doughboys, and I plan to, I love to do podcasts and promote Stay Positive. So, if you guys have your own podcast, invite me on. I'll come on. I love it. I love to talk. But the one thing too is I did start a new job. So that's why I've been a little bit slower about editing. But I have a couple podcast episodes banked. So this is one of them. This episode is with a really cool guest who I actually recorded with, I think, over a month ago. So we may talk about stuff that feels dated in it. I don't think we do though, because we talk about mental health, therapy, my guest's life, which is evergreen. This guest is perfect for this podcast because she actually has expertise in all the stuff that I talk about here with absolutely no expertise. What do I mean by that? Well, she's a counselor. She's a therapist. So she actually talks through these types of things with people. This podcast is all about thinking and being all in your head and being positive and what and yada, yada, yada. So, she actually does this stuff for a living. And she's also my cousin. Haha. I had to have another cousin on, and we were overdue. She is a cousin that I've looked up to for my entire life. She's just the embodiment of grace and wisdom, so you're gonna love this interview, and I was so happy to get to talk to her. So here's a chat with my cousin Natalie Shiung. Hey, hi Nanny, hello.
Hi Sierra. It's so nice to see you, and it's so cool to be on this side of it. Because I'm used to being a listener. Yes.
Oh, yeah. No, feel free to talk as much as you want now. No need to listen to what I have to say. But yeah, this is exciting. I mean, I know you do a lot over video chat, but if you want to talk about what you do, and then I can also preface by we're cousins, but
yes,
I'll get into that. But yeah.
Yes. Let's see, like an intro, kind of let's see, I am Sierra's cousin. I am a therapist out here in Hong Kong. So I live in Hong Kong. I was born and raised in the US, and, many holidays spent with Sierra's family. And then, about 10, 11 years ago, I moved out here. My husband and I, he was already working out here, so I moved out here to join him. And let's see, what else? We have 2 bunnies.
Yay! Yes, that's very, very important information. Mm-hmm. Just getting that out there for the fans.
Yes, right. I'm trying to build my bunny fan base, which is very small.
Important.
Yeah.
It's easy to build, I would say. They do it themselves, honestly. Mm-hmm. But yeah, yes, I guess I should have started by saying, so I know I've had Christy on the podcast, I've had Melissa, as far as the family on the podcast, and it's honestly the best because then I get to talk to you guys in a long form, which I guess I talked to Melissa in long form, but I don't know if I've been able to talk to you one-on-one long form like this or Christy as much. And it's sort of like, I guess I heard Christy on her podcast.
Yes.
So I kind of heard a lot more, which is exciting. Yeah.
Shade and Fog.
And so we got to talk about that. Yeah, Shade and Fog plug. But I remember when we were talking, it was like, oh yeah, well, Nanny, our oldest I guess our oldest female cousin is that, yeah,
Yes,
that's right.
true.
Justin is our oldest male cousin, you know, is an actual therapist because we got to talking about therapy and it's like, well, yeah, of course, but she's nanny, you know, so it's just funny because obviously, you know, we know these things about each other, but it's always maybe not what we get to talk about at holidays.
Totally.
Like you said, it's like pretty few and far between, and
Totally.
we hear about each other's life updates and things like that, but it's very exciting to actually get to talk
You know, and
to you.
you make a really good point because you've seen, you know, you see behind the curtain, you've seen the sausage being made, you know what I'm actually like, as opposed to, you know, I always pictured therapists as being, I don't know, just embodied special unicorn souls that, you know, never get upset and never have a bad day and understand at all times and have endless time for you. And
Right.
which is true, but so too do, you know, accountants and comedians and pharmacists.
Oh, sure. In different capacities.
Yeah,
Pharmacists
it's just a
and,
job,
everybody.
but it happens to be something that I'm really into and really enjoy, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, yeah. So I guess diving into that right away, like how did you find your way to
Oh, good
being
question.
a counselor and a psychologist? Because I think that's kind of,
Not
you know, I know
direct.
it wasn't your first career. So yeah, how did
Yeah.
that come
Actually, that's a really
about?
good question because I wondered it. Like, and now that I am working in this profession, it makes sense. But at the time, yeah. So in undergrad and sort of throughout my little journey, I see how there were little kernels placed. Like, for instance, I had this amazing roommate who I lived with basically all throughout college, Donna, who was a psychology major and has gone on to practice and or you know went to grad school and did the whole thing. And I remember thinking like, oh, that's interesting because as you know, in our family, everyone is in medicine or engineering or business, and something like psychology, which in fact is also one of the tenets of careers out there, seemed really different to me. So I didn't really have an understanding, but she kind of introduced it, you know, just by association. And then I had other friends, Caroline in college, who went on to study and is practicing in LA. Yeah, but so anyway, let's see. I studied business as an undergrad and I worked in business and then had various different careers kind of in consulting. And then I switched at one point and was at a recruiting firm, and I was there for a couple of years. And then in my last year there, that happened to be during the economic downturn. And so a lot of people were leaving that profession, and it just so happened one of the women I was working with was leaving to do her master's in psychology. And so that was kind of what got me interested in how to actually execute. Actually, I should say that was what taught me how to actually execute on my interest.
Cool.
Long answer,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. That's,
it was
no,
circuitous.
that's great. Yeah. I guess I didn't realize, yeah, it did, was around that time. And, you know, also, like you said, I think I was even talking with Melissa, my sister, about, you know, the fact that we are kind of like that, you know, mental health, of course, has become more of a topic that people actually talk about, less stigmatized, and even maybe in our generation, like more trendy because it's
Yeah.
like a fun, exciting thing. And so, you know, maybe that's part of why maybe our parents growing up weren't really like, didn't see that as an option or didn't really know that that was like a thing that would be not just a career, but also like a thing to treat or to look into.
Yeah.
And then, but even Melissa was like, oh yeah, I kind of remember Melissa being interested in that stuff. So maybe I saw it from her and maybe she saw it from you. Or like, you know, we're like, well, how do we trace this? Because it didn't necessarily come from our parents, like a lot of other things have, but
Right.
maybe friends. And like you said, I mean, clearly you had at least a few close friends who were into it. But then you also had to pick those friends. So clearly
Oh, that's a good
they
point.
like had a personality that was attractive to you, you know?
Yeah, actually,
know.
that's a really good point. Perhaps it wasn't just completely luck, but yeah, it's interesting. You make a good point, because I see how much our parents' generation was just not as familiar. I remember even talking to my mom about how she decided to have, so I'm the oldest in my family, and then I have two younger sisters. And we are each very close in age by today's standards. We're each Michelle and Kim, like 1.5 to 2 years apart.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember asking my mom why that was. And she was saying at that time, the guidance was to have children quickly, or, kind of close together, because then they won't remember. Unfortunately, I don't remember exactly what she said, but I guess
they won't remember.
Yeah, the sense was they won't remember this kind of messy period, and they'll kind of grow up together,
Sure,
which is,
yeah, okay.
And the dream happened, because the three of us did grow up together as kind of peers, fighting together, playing together. Whereas nowadays, I think the guidance is a little bit more like you and your sister, where the spacing is a little bit more. And I guess the idea is that one child reaches a certain degree of development and independence, so that when the next one comes, there's, I don't know, just some degree of personhood already in the first one.
Oh, interesting.
Something like
yeah,
that.
I think Melissa said she packed her bags and wanted to leave when I came through. So she already knew she could live independently.
Like, I'm out of here.
She was like,
I have life
she's
skills.
putting everything in the, ready to go send out her CV around town, get a new job.
I can totally see that.
But yeah, I see. I mean, yeah, and the fun thing about our family is that so many cousins, and I got the benefit of growing up seeing so many cousins, like, older than me. And I feel like at the time, like early, some of my earliest memories of you, I think you were probably already in college, or
yeah, probably
maybe, because, which is great. And you're always like the, kind of the North Star of like role models,
Oh gosh.
Like, yes. I mean, and public speaking. I mean, so many great things to see you do throughout the years.
It is interesting to think that you and I somewhat bookend our cousin generation, right? Like,
Sure,
in that sense. I mean, yes, Justin is older than me, but in terms of the girls, it's you all the way up to me.
Right, yeah. Justin had to go rough it alone as the lone boy, but yeah, we all had I had plenty of role models ahead of me. So it's just hilarious thinking about that too. But I mean, and then I guess I remember when we visited you, and we talked about this recently, when we visited you when you lived in New York City. You were probably only like 24, 23, like quite young, so younger than I am now. But I remember thinking like, oh, wow, she's a full grown adult and has an apartment in New York City, living.
So bossy.
Yeah. Living so, has a job, right? And
employed.
And then now looking at like, okay, so that was, a couple years ago. Hey, I haven't done anything near that. And so I'm like, oh wow,
you've been doing that since you were in high school. You've been
Oh God, no.
You've been like out there working. Honestly, I think in a sense you've been to a club probably before I did.
Oh no. I mean, yeah, it's hilarious thinking about too, like when we were talking with, when I was talking with Christy about how some of us younger cousins too also kind of like get to see the steps ahead and like, it's kind of great in the sense of like, I kind of knew, okay, so then you go to college and then maybe you get a job and then you go and you live, versus Melissa was like, yeah, I didn't really know there was like life past 6th grade. Cause like, who's she gonna know who else was,
I know. I was listening to her comment of that. That is amazing. And so well put. So well put, my God.
Right, like what happens after that? I don't know. We just all walk off a cliff? Who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. But but specifically consulting, because that is a thing that I think a lot of people aspire to after college. And it is seems like a very tough but enriching thing as far as like seeing a lot of different things. But do you feel like you learned from that stage of life and having been through that thing that a lot of people maybe don't know much about or look up to? How was that stage of your life?
Ooh, that is such a good question.
I know it's a while ago,
Sarah.
but
You are so good at this job. Oh my gosh. Yes. Well, and I talk about this often with my childhood friends who I'm still really close with, and we reflect on our 20s. Mostly our 20s and 30s were just periods of tremendous growth. I think of, a year in my 20s is probably worth, I don't know, like 5 years in my 30s, and a year in my 30s was probably worth like 10 years, because you cover so much ground in terms of self-discovery, which unfortunately is always accompanied with mistakes and horrific regrets, but also so much growth and so much opportunity. And in fact, it makes me think of your really clever topic of positivity on a PODSITIVE podcast.
Ooh, yeah, working that in very smooth.
Yes, but truly, it's when I think of all of the different experiences I had in my 20s and earlier in life, and later for that matter, really. So what am I saying? Basically, all life of different experiences.
Nice.
It does, if you have the right attitude for it, of just a degree of openness and like a little bit of humility, then you learn so much, and then there's such a positiveness to the learning process, or even to the horrific falls. You discover stuff along the way. So yeah, at work, in consulting, particularly in the travel, I was just traveling enormous amount, which was very, very unpleasant at the time, because it's just exhausting. And in your 20s, everyone's having such rich lives, especially like before social media, everyone was having rich lives in person. And so if you're not there in person, you're really quite left out. And this is before the FOMO term existed, but now that really resonated with me, because I was just constantly in FOMO, because I was international, probably, I don't know, maybe like 70-80% of the time, which meant that I was just out of the loop all the time, and it was quite frustrating, but it also taught me a lot. And I saw a lot in terms of, other cultures, other people, other ways of doing things, the way Americans are perceived by other people, other places. That was really eye-opening.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's interesting, because I think a lot of people see the flip of that as like, ooh, to travel and everything. They might be, looking at that and saying like, that's what I should have done. Or, now with social media, basically everything else is what we should have done.
I know.
Just seeing any other way to live is the only way.
Yeah.
But interesting. Yeah, I mean, for sure, the FOMO thing, except for right now, I guess, because there's a limited amount of things to do, always applies. But yeah. And then, well, okay, then I guess that's interesting, because I also, only living in America, and then I grew up in Southern California, only living in Southern California for so long, which is great and stable, and I'm thankful for it. But for sure, I was very and still am like, oh yeah, I guess that is very like America, centric, or the way I'm thinking is actually really local, even though I think it's universal, and maybe that's just the way we think of ourselves. But like, what kind of things were you shocked to learn at that time, I guess, about how people see us?
That's a good question. Well, perhaps, I mean, there are going to be other things that come to mind, but the thing that comes to mind most immediately right now is that we forget in America that you can travel around America and communicate with everybody. But it's interesting to me that in other countries there are sort of regional dialects, regional languages, and we have just it's such a benefit to be able to to strike up potentially a meaningful conversation with people in any part of the country. Another thing that I noticed, that this was not my story, but I heard it, and it was, anyway, the point is, I came to appreciate how American it is to be friendly, that there's a form of interaction that we have with people that's very chipper and how are you? I hope you're doing well. Like, what brings you here? Just very upbeat and interactive, that if you are in a situation where people are not that way, it's easy to assume that that person is not welcoming or is not inviting, but it looks different in other countries. They are just as welcoming and just as kind. It just presents differently. And I think that also sort of started me on this journey of curiosity about how the same kind of feeling can look different on this person versus that person. And
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Because I guess we kind of assume like certain things must be human nature, or just like, oh, well, because, biologically our faces go like this when we're happy or whatever. But I guess that's definitely not the case.
Exactly.
Across the board.
Yeah. It's like, because we're all born with relatively the same physical characteristics, but then there's just so much culture and social norm that's then baked into how to present as happy or pleased, or is it even appropriate to smile that way and to show that much joy. Which actually, another thing that I'm thinking of is, you and I both love Terrace House, and one of the reasons I was just all over that show when I first heard about it was that I really enjoyed the opportunity to get a little peek into how Japanese people behave, at home when they're just making a snack or something.
Right.
Granted, I know it's reality TV with air quotes, and it's, 20 somethings and they're all trying to date each other, but still, it's way more insight than I would ever get, no matter how many times I go to Tokyo on vacation or something, or Karuizawa. That was my favorite season.
Yeah, or how many terrace house tours and exactly. How many restaurants that they went on dates on and you checked out. Very exciting. Just a little context for the listeners. Natalie went on a full-blown terrace house tour of Karuizawa. Very cool.
And Tokyo. We did another one,
too.
In
Tokyo. Oh, specifics. Well, you got to do Tokyo.
Got to keep going.
Who knows? Yeah, you got to do all the places. But yeah, that is so true. That's why I like it too. It does feel like you're kind of getting like this, ooh, look, they don't know I'm watching. So I can see the authentic nature of how people, are just doing their own thing at home, and how that's the same as what I do, and how that's different. But of course it is I'm sure. I wouldn't want people to judge how I am based on what they're doing on our reality shows, but
totally.
But of course, hopefully that the terrace house is trying to be more slice of life. I don't know.
Or it's even it's interesting, like the things you can't hide. For instance, like the way that Japanese people might flirt, or, even just they have to flirt, but it looks so different. And not to get really specific, but like, for instance, in this most recent season with Vivi, Vivi, yes, with her flirting style, it was much more Western. So, I'm sure you or I could see it coming from further away, versus when Japanese people, there was a lot of like, does he like her? I don't know. Like, why is Yumi being so receptive to Boss? I don't get it. Why is this happening? But it was fascinating to me to see that even if you assume so much of it is probably staged, but just seeing how, what does flirting look like, or how does one ask someone out on a date in Japan versus the US or wherever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That is true. It's a really, because of course they probably are interested in each other. Like, that can't be that manufactured or produced. Well, it can, but but I guess like, yeah, so their flirting should be for the goal of getting a date. And so how does that work, and who responds to what? So it's, yeah, that is fascinating. And I feel like too, the more internet and stuff is out there, like it seems like at least, I get a little peek, because I feel like I've been able to look at maybe more everyday depictions of life elsewhere because of like Instagram. It's like, I followed this dog who lives in Thailand, and then here's her family, so obviously it's one example, but I like to think I'm international because I'm on Instagram. Anyway,
and you are.
Speaking of your international life at the moment, and how, what was it like moving to Hong Kong? Because I guess I don't know if I've ever actually fully asked you this, because it happened and then you're there, and it seems like you're thriving. So I'm like, she's doing great. But yeah, what was it like in that moment and that decision? Because it's not a small move.
Not a small move. It's yes, I like the question. So let's see. Moving to Hong Kong was probably just the thing that I was always meant to do. It's bizarre how much from like day one I felt like this is my home.
Oh, wow.
And which is surprising given the fact that, so Sierra's from LA, I'm from Northern California, and I loved Northern California. Like, I love living in the Bay Area. I completely picture myself as a Bay Area girl. But somehow in coming to Hong Kong, it was just all of the things somehow clicked into place. And frankly, that was even independent of Eric. Although, I mean, obviously it was a big help that he was here. That,
yes.
But yeah, so let's see. In terms of the decision, I think that was the question. I met Eric. He was already living in Asia. So let's see. Eric is originally from Taiwan. He's lived kind of all over Asia. But at that point, he was living and working in Hong Kong. And I have always wanted to live in Asia. And I attempted and failed miserably just after college because I went to Shanghai and realized I don't speak Mandarin. And as it turns out, that's what they speak in China. So then it's harder. Yeah, and I guess, so as context, you've mentioned this before, but to your listeners, my family is Chinese. Oh, right. Sierra's, and half of Sierra is Chinese.
Half Japanese.
Yeah.
Chinese.
But our family is incredibly removed from the immigrant experience. So both of our parents, as well as our grandparents' generation, were born in the U.S. So the language and the culture is frankly a foreign concept, because even when our grandparents, especially our grandfather, was born in the U.S., it predated the Chinatowns and the Chinese communities that now really thrive in Southern California. So they assimilated so completely that everything was kind of actively discarded at that time. So anyway, for me to come to Asia, I look Asian, but I don't have any of the reference points or the language background or the, I guess even the historical context to appreciate it. But so anyway, I came to Hong Kong, and that was why it was just so incredible to me, was to see how comfortable I was despite not having a lot of familiarity. And yes, and it's been amazing, and I super love it.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I don't know if I've ever been able to describe our family history as clearly and eloquently as you have just now, because I think about, because I think, I'm like, well, just many generations ago, so I kind of think like, well, doesn't everybody get rid of their culture by the time, you're 4 generations in? I don't know. But yeah, I guess it is true that, like, of course, at the time, it was before a lot of culture could, you kind of depend on a community to make sure that stuff persists. And so it was probably more deliberately lost than we realize. But yeah, I mean, that's really comforting to hear that you have found that home in Hong Kong,
I know.
because, it's a weird, it's a weird, like, I think being, a lot of Asian Americans maybe talk about going back to their homeland and, the discomfort that comes with that or whatever, or maybe they're a family and they don't know them or whatever. But because we are so far removed, it's sort of like, wait, what is the homeland? We don't know
The
where it
homeland
is,
LA
And
or San
yeah,
Francisco.
I guess we're here, but also, right. Yeah. So there's a lot of, so that's really
It's
great
like
to hear.
the
and
way
it's,
I often explain it to people as, because most of my Asian American friends are the children of immigrants. So I often explain it to them as, I am your grandchild, or even in some cases your great grandchild, because
oh, that's a good way to
like
put it.
that's one way that people can think about it. Because when I was in
Right.
college, there were a lot of Asian people around me, way more than I had ever encountered earlier in life. And I remember people would respond to me the way I present, which is I look Asian. So probably we have, we have the same experiences. We have the same struggles in communicating with our parents. You totally
sure,
get
yeah.
that your parents don't, are more strict with you or have certain expectations of you. And actually, I didn't get that. And I don't have any communication problems, or I don't have any,
Right.
I can have a full conversation with grandma, and, and she,
Yeah.
and she also can. And I remember actually, I had this funny moment in college, and you were there, but you may not remember this, but I had come down to LA and I was meeting with my roommate, Donna, who's from LA, and her boyfriend at the time. And so he came to grandma and grandma's house and met up. For some reason, I think they were like picking me up and maybe we were going out or something. And I remember when I was with Dennis and Donna alone, he was like, wow, your grandfather doesn't have an accent. And I had just never thought of it that way, because, our grandfather is just our grandfather. That's just the way he speaks. And our grandma, that's just the way she speaks. She speaks like grandma. But it took someone outside of the family to make that comment. And then I was like, oh, right. And he was like, wait, how long has your family been here? And I was like, dude, longer than so many other families.
Right. Been here the whole time. I don't know what to say.
But that was also when,
That's so
like,
funny.
in meeting Eric's family, for instance, they understood that I didn't speak Chinese, but I think it took them meeting my parents to realize, oh, or like, how we had that lunch in LA and they met all of our extended family. And that was when they were like, oh, this isn't about like Natalie, kind of being shy or, being self-conscious about her Chinese. It's just like, no one in that family speaks Chinese.
Yeah, imagine. Yeah, no, yeah. It's not just a personal thing. It's a full-blown family thing. That's funny. Yeah, I guess it is. It's strange, and it's funny because I feel like when I would also talk to friends who, and pretty much, all my friends probably who I met in college, almost all children of immigrants. And they would, loop me in and, this thing. And then I'd probably just be like, ha, yeah, I didn't know. I was like, yeah, I guess so, whatever. Ha. But yeah, looking back, it's like, oh yeah, I guess I probably, didn't know that much about what they're talking about, but I wasn't really sure how to tell them. So we'll clean that up later.
We're kind of like our own little people, I must say. It's like, because not only was there not the language, our grandfather, talk about not an Asian model minority. He was an artist. I mean, that's just not the typical Asian storyline.
What does that even mean? Right. Yeah, I think I tell people that sometimes and they're like, so what? Like, I don't know what they think.
Yeah,
I think
they're like, so not a doctor?
Yeah, they're like, are you? Yeah, like, did he do that on the side? Or like, I don't know what they imagine. Because also that, jobs change so much and what it means to be an artist changed a lot.
Right.
So it's like, oh yeah, I guess he would draw. He would just draw. Anything and everything you needed.
And he was and he would draw, and he was a cartoonist, which is just like so many layers removed from the typical Asian.
Sure.
The way that Americans have embodied Asians, which going back to that other point you were asking about, which was such a good one, is like how in traveling around the world, how does America, I don't know, differ, or in what way is that different? But yeah, it turns out Chinese people can be cartoonists and be really good at it, and like have senses of humor,
Who knew?
and then pass that on to their granddaughter.
I know. But yeah, I mean, it is always funny to look over that stuff. But okay, I did want to fit in too about specifically your women's workshop that you run, because that's another thing that's very unique. And I think in the same way that, model minority, breaking the stereotype stuff, it's definitely different from, I think sometimes that stereotype can be like just powering through and doing, the ambitious thing and not really creating community, maybe. Not creating community in the same way. So what does women's workshop mean to you, and what was the beginnings of that?
Another good question. Yeah, women's workshop, I love, 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 love. I started it with another therapist friend of mine, Cherry, 2 years ago. And, the genesis of it was I had just finished, I had been working with women. So aside from my practice, I had been volunteering at this refugee center here in Hong Kong with, it just kind of serving as it was for people who were applying for applying to be accepted for their refugee status. So they were having to recount their stories to lawyers or caseworkers, and in so doing, that obviously can surface a lot of trauma. And so if they wanted to, or if the caseworker thought it would be helpful, they would talk to me as in kind of a therapeutic capacity. So anyway, in the process of that, I encountered so many women who had just dealt with so much stuff. And this was right around kind of the Me Too movement also. And I really wanted to do work with women in some way, but I don't speak a lot of the language. Like, we would often have to have translators because a lot of these people are coming from African countries and all kinds of languages going on. So cool. I felt limited in that way, but I knew I still wanted to do something with women, and I saw how connective building a sense of community can be, obviously. I mean, we know that. It's just hard sometimes to create that, and I had even experienced that same struggle in moving to Hong Kong and trying to figure out, like, who are my people here? So anyway, I thought I could still create a group just for women who want to speak English with me, talk about topics. And I personally love basically what you and I are doing right now, is just talking deeply with maybe one or two or three other people. And so that was what kind of got women's workshops started in my mind. And then cool. What we do is just, we pick kind of open-ended questions and discuss them. And the idea is that when you talk with your friends or your family or coworkers even, you get sort of the same type of feedback, or, you're in a bit of an information silo. And that if you go to strangers, you have possibly access to different information and different perspectives. And there's sometimes a lot of safety in anonymity. And, if you don't know these people, you can admit to not understanding the thing that everyone else seems to get, or, you can challenge opinions. And I have to say, women's workshop has really been helping for me, in that a lot of the women who have come have really opened my eyes to things, which I just love, love, love. So, that's...
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think that's... I remember when I first heard about that you were doing this, it sounds so necessary. I feel like, you kind of wish that, well, I wish that it was here. Wish that I could join now. But I guess, like, it's kind of true that, I for sure probably don't talk to many different people. I do, in the sense of now with the podcast.
Yeah.
But it's also a lot scarier too, I guess, like asking a guest who I've never talked to before.
True.
And then meeting them over Zoom. It's like, oh, hi. And then I always say something awkward and, I mean, sorry, the wrong, so it's always, it's a lot more challenging, but I do get a lot out of it because I hear experiences or things that I never came across before. And that's one thing that I liked about comedy before it, now I don't meet anybody through it because it's all remote. But yeah, you kind of are doing more on the ground and you bump into people maybe that I wouldn't have bumped into before. But
Yeah.
I guess how do you give, or what kind of advice would you give to somebody who, especially at a time like this when, there's not a lot of ways to go and meet people or make friends, or even just in this age, everybody, at least here, always talks about how social media has made us more separate than ever before or lonelier. It's a lonely time. So how do you gather the courage to organize or initiate friendships and things like that? Because that's hard.
Oh,
And you
that's
had to
so
do it
true.
moving to a whole new place too. So even that experience must have made you a soldier of friendship.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I guess what was interesting in moving to Hong Kong at that point, so I was 30, 29, I forget. At that point, I hadn't made the last, like, if you really think about it, the friends I had made in childhood, I kept throughout all of childhood. And then in college, I made friends, honestly, in the same way. You make friends with the people that you happen to live with and through their friends, or the people you happen to have class with and through their friends, which is the same as when you're a kid. It's whoever's in your class. And so
Your seat partner.
yeah, your seat partner, your bandstand mate. But yeah, so in coming out here, it was interesting because making friends was quite a challenge. I think also in part because at that point I was engaged, but so you just socialize a little bit differently. And it was also coupled with that point in my life, a lot of the people I was meeting were sort of in their nesting stage because they were either themselves getting married and or having kids. And granted, in Hong Kong, people get married and have kids much later, but I was meeting people kind of in their mid-30s or so, or older. And so a lot of them were getting married and having kids, and I knew Eric and I had decided that wasn't something we wanted to pursue, which then put us in this kind of funny, weird bubble where we were married, so we weren't necessarily out and partying with single people, but we were also not joining like the mommy blogs and checking out preschools and stuff, which was, which truly is like a whole social ecosystem that you can just plug and play into when you move countries. You find the school and then all of a sudden there's a whole community there. It was quite a challenge, honestly. It was a little bit weird. And then this is when I had a real epiphany for my marriage too, which was because I was kind of looking to Eric to become my best friend, also my husband, also my, kind of career advisor, just all the things. And that was when I realized, oh, but actually I have amazing girlfriends. They're just back in the US, but, the phone was invented a while ago and that exists and works.
Yeah.
and then apps and all kinds of free international call things popped up too. And that was when I realized I can absolutely make new friends in Hong Kong, but I have lovely friends already, and I can keep in touch with them. And Eric can just be my husband. He's a pretty average girlfriend, and that's okay.
Yeah, he doesn't have to wear all those hats.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's like a revelation that I think is I've been hearing a lot recently. Is that sort of the dependency on the partner to be everything kind of makes it a lot, it's just it's a tough standard, and nobody really wants to be that person, let alone, you looking for that in the other person. So
totally. I think Esther Perel had a TED talk about this, and I remember when I heard it, I was like, that is exactly that's exactly the process I had gone through. God, I remember having this great conversation with this friend. Actually, it was more like my friend's friend. She was this French woman, and I remember telling her and my friend just like, oh yeah, Eric, I tried to talk to him about this stuff, but he doesn't talk to me about it. And she was like, God, you're so American. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm like a little offended, but also intrigued. And that was when she explained, like, you Americans, you think your partner completes you. You guys all buy into that Jerry Maguire stuff. Like, this is before Esther Perel. And so she was explaining, she's like, you guys are all into your rom-coms. You all think it's about the partner. She's like, it's not about the partner. What's wrong with you? And it kind of took someone who made it more of like a cultural thing as opposed to a Natalie crazy thing to make me see oh, maybe this is a different way of looking at it. And then I kind of shifted, and that was a really magical thing for our marriage.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I guess like that it does, I guess noticing the trend of being able to see outside of yourself and seeing like the, other perspectives, it does really round out like, oh, okay, wow, I guess that's what I look like. But I also agree, if somebody's telling you it's a you thing, then it's really hard to be like, well, but then, okay, then I guess I got to work on this within my own life. But the minute it starts to become like a bigger than you thing, I think it's a lot easier to like take a step back. But that's really exciting. I know you also do couples counseling, or were a couples counselor. Are you? I don't know if that's still part of the mix.
Good question.
Is it part of the mix?
Who knows, man? I see individuals, and typically the couple aspect comes up in it. I'm a marriage family therapist, so the family system is really interesting to me. The couple, be that a couple or a family or even a more extended family, But yeah, I took a fascinating couples training course, and actually I was going to take a different one this fall if there hadn't been COVID, because I would have had to travel for it. But anyway, but I work primarily with adults, with individual adults, and we talk about all kinds of stuff, relationships being one of them, and it's fun and fascinating.
I mean, I'm sure that's quite, or it ends up being part of it no matter what, if it's like, part of their life. And
actually
that brings,
I would add to that, the interesting thing, this is just the way I happen to interact with clients, but it's that the relationship dynamic is important and relevant in a romantic capacity, but also, in a friendship one. And I would even argue, in a sense, like in a countrywide, like if you were to look at a country as a family, or like,
whoa,
your eyes, you're like, whoa,
wow, no, I mean that's
so then
a
I kind of
revolutionary topic.
I think that's interesting,
Oh wow, okay, well, ooh. So based on like, you can kind of see how people maybe interact within their more local relationships, or whatever their inside of their family relationships, that mirrors their country.
I mean, this is a very enormous generalization, but I think about it a lot.
Sure. I mean, just the way that just culturally, but
Yes. Cultural. This is like, I think about this in terms of like America versus China, for instance. It's like in American families on a micro level, there's, the ideal is that you strive to one day be independent of your family and to one day be self-reliant. And that's, that is what success looks like. That's what safety is. Your parents are proud if you leave and are like, it's a little weird if you don't, or it's weird is completely not the fair or right word, but it's just in America, the independence is really respected. And what I found to be interesting in coming here is the Chinese people I met, how much it's like, they want independence, but also there's just a tremendous amount of respect and reverence for the family unit. Like, that's a really important thing here that I really like, and it's really cool to see. but it therefore puts a kind of it casts a slightly different shadow, or maybe a slightly different color on the way the government is run too, in a way, where there is this sort of there's a faith in the government and an expectation that it will take care of you. And if seen through the lens of like, we all want independence, then that can look a little bit authoritarian, or,
Right.
Everyone is forced to be a certain way. But that's, if you put it, I don't know, in the context of like, oh, well, her mom just won't let her go out. But like, my American mom wants me to go out and I get to go to the parties and it's so great, it's so great. But it's just a different style of parenting, really. It's not right or wrong. And that, at least, like with that, again, very, very broad brushstroke, but it helps me at least metabolize the news a lot more easily because I, am born and raised in America. I have a very American mindset for the world, but I am curious about how other countries do things. And I don't think it's fair to just dismiss it as crazy or wrong or inhumane. In a different context, actually, it makes a ton of sense.
Sure. Yeah. It is eye-opening. I think even hearing about like how different different like mindsets that also like expand out into the society. Like I remember I was reading some book about just how like different countries, different cultures treat depression or just self-care, really. And like in America, I mean, again, generalizations, right? But like maybe here it's like, all right, I was doing the motion, but I couldn't think. Treat yourself, like, self-care, go to the spa, do it to you. Okay, that's great. And then other places it might be like, oh, okay, go outward. What sort of, how can you kind of help the people in your life so that they kind of are happier and then they make you feel happier. That feels like more sustainable, I guess.
Yes.
And maybe that's what we're trying to adopt here. And maybe the goal is just to kind of like meet in the middle everywhere. But like, that there's, but yeah, I mean, America's always been, I guess, very like independence and freedom, even though, now that's kind of crumbling in the sense of like, well, unless,
I know, so concerning.
unless other things happen. But anyway, we're okay. But yeah, no, it is true because it's also really, I think when we look at other people and see them under a different type of government, it's easy for Americans to be like, oh, how can you, you're all helpless and, you didn't, right. Like you didn't agree to this, but it's like, well, actually that's really taking away their agency and their ability to make decisions. So, I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying, but that's all. I think when it's kind of interesting here too, is I guess like what you're saying about family and independence, like people who are kind of at the intersection of like Asian and American, sometimes maybe it kind of does butt up against like, well, society wants me to like leave the home and be like a pioneer, and then like, but my mom wants me to stay here, and take care of her, so I'm sure that's, you see that sometimes, I guess, too, which is fine, and hope, you wish that it could all align, but it's always,
it's a struggle. It's interesting. I find it fascinating to see differences in different places, and just, I don't know, think about why that is.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's, I mean, you're in you have been able to do that because you've made your life a gathering of different things in different places. So that's very exciting. Yeah. And speaking of a gathering, no, I don't know. I'm trying to transition to your bunnies.
Oh, my bunnies. Yeah.
We can't complete the conversation without talking about Sam and Chewy. So how did the bunnies come into your life, and what do the bunnies mean to you?
Oh, the bunnies, so transformative. So we started with Sam. We began by babysitting her, or bunny sitting her, when our friends would travel. And then I think they got Sam because they had two young girls, and I guess they had maybe just they weren't playing well with the bunny, because as it turns out, actually rabbits are terrible for, or children and rabbits do not mix, because rabbits actually need quiet, and they're very, very delicate.
Yeah.
And they're prey animals, so they're really anxious, you know, if you think about it. So anyway, so the father had asked us to adopt her, and we were thrilled to do so. So we adopted Sam, but before we knew we were adopting Sam, we knew we wanted a bunny. So then Eric had we got Chewy. So then we had 2 bunnies, which is lovely.
Great. And they have a friend, you know, not alone in their world.
Yes.
I mean, I remember hearing the term prey animal. I don't think I ever thought about that until later. I was like, oh yeah, that's a scary life to lead. You know, you're really on defense.
They're always like,
lot,
oh my God, are you going to eat me? Oh my God, oh my God. We're like, dude, we haven't eaten you in so long.
Yeah, we would have done it already, right?
It's okay. You get all the good food. It's all right.
Yeah. And I guess, do they like each other? Was it hard to get them to become buddies or?
Good question.
Bunny buddies?
They did not like each other. Then they liked each other, because our groomer is amazing. Jofi Mama is like just the bunny whisperer. And she and her colleague Mandy bonded them for us, because we had attempted and kept failing, in part because Chewy was kind of a teenager, and it became, Chewy is a boy, Sam ironically is a girl. Sam is for Samantha. So once Chewy kind of hit bunny puberty, it was like he just could not concentrate on anything. It was like constantly trying to hump Sam. So that was awkward. But anyway, so they helped us bond them. They bonded, and then they fought, unfortunately, which kind of unbonds them.
I see.
And this is far too long of a story, but so basically now they just live separately. So Sam is in here with me in the study, and then Chewy's, we converted we had a spare bedroom, but just like Melissa and Connor were probably among the last people to use it. And so we converted it into Chewy's room now.
Oh, good. Yeah. Good thing, you know, I mean, sometimes they got to have their own rooms and figure out from there how to go on. But yeah, that's, you know, I feel like I always have fantasized about having a bunny, because they seem very soft and very, you know, friendly, but I know they also poop a lot. I don't know. How would you describe a good person and environment to have a bunny?
Ooh, super good question, because I think you and Dylan would crush having a bunny, because I mean, bunnies are like the perfect animal. I mean, not that I'm biased, but they're they're like friendly and sweet, and Chewy runs to greet you just like a dog, but they are clean and self grooming like cats, and quiet. I mean, they don't make any sound. And you can totally potty train them. I mean, they're like cats. They want to have a spot where they go to the bathroom all the time. So as long as you train them to use, you know, a spot that's maybe in their cage or in somewhere, then it's great. And you can just wrap up your wires in those little wire protectors, or you can also kind of train them to not do that. You just, like, if they do something you don't do, you just kind of, when bunnies are mad, they stomp. And so if they do something that you don't want them to do, you can kind of not really stomp, but, you know, just kind of hit the ground loudly, and then they understand that was bad. Whether or not they whether or not they care is a separate issue, but you can kind of train them to not chew on stuff. So my bunnies are potty trained, so they do poop a lot, but they just poop in a litter box. And
it's pretty good.
Yeah, and they eat. You know, this is what I learned about. Eric and I went to go see the pandas in Chengdu, like, I don't know, maybe a couple years ago.
Incredible.
But anyway, not to mention that, but the point was pandas are vegetarians. And, when we went, we got to spend a bunch of time like one-on-one with the pandas, which
What?
I thought was
Ah,
amazing.
the
But
dream.
in the back of my mind, I was like, uh-oh, there's going to be like a whole bunch of panda poo everywhere. But in fact,
Oh,
panda
yeah.
poo, it's weird to say it smells lovely, but it smells lovely. It's crazy because it's just
What?
mashed up bamboo. And bamboo mashed up
Sure,
has
yeah,
kind of a
okay.
sweet, fresh smell. It's kind of like cucumbery and like appley maybe. Like it totally smelled like you walked into a pressed juicery or something. It was really
Oh my
bizarre.
gosh, that's so funny.
It was so funny
Wow.
and such a pleasant surprise and amazing. And so in that way, I would liken it to, so bunnies also are vegetarians. So all they eat are like hay. Our bunnies eat hay and like carrot tops and lettuce. So their poop, you don't smell their poop. You just smell the hay.
Great. I mean, look.
I mean, they're
dream
amazing
pets.
animals. I love
And
bunnies. I love
pandas, dream
bunnies.
animals.
Yeah.
Ah, that's great. I mean, what an endorsement, you know?
Yes.
That is that's lovely to hear. It makes sense. I mean, yeah, it's exciting, and I'm surprised and thrilled to hear that pandas smell good
It is so
throughout
surprising. It's like,
the digestive.
and I must say, I've told this to your mom and your sister before, but it's like, you know, because growing up we didn't have pets, and it was your family with Tabasco that,
Oh yes,
that
we
was
had a
like,
Shiba Inu.
yeah, your Shiba Inu that introduced me, although not really, because we couldn't really hang out with the dog because
Sure.
Michelle was so allergic, and oh, it makes me think how
Oh.
awful. And then you had your, was it a Komodo dragon?
Oh God, no! It was a bearded dragon.
Oh, a bearded dragon. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. The Komodos.
But
those
still,
are
it was
those
big. Yeah.
man-eating things. But yeah, it could get very big, and it was they're probably the most domesticated of lizards. So they do. They're like oftentimes if somebody has a pet lizard, they're probably a bearded dragon because they're very friendly. But yes,
Yeah,
I
you
did. So
loved
we
your
were
bearded-
spoiled with pets.
And like his, I guess, tank or like his warming, his little house
Yeah, yeah.
was enormous. It took up like a big
It was
chunk
big.
of
Yeah,
your
he
room.
needed. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, he was a big guy. He needed a lot of space. You know, fed him crickets.
Yes. It was amazing.
And yeah,
I
yeah, and it was a formative time.
It was so interesting because I had just never, I wasn't familiar with having pets, and your family was the one that had the pets, and you had, it was so cool, and yeah. Anyway, that's what I will say about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I guess because I know my dad was very into. He had parakeets, and then him growing up had probably a few dogs and cats. So I think he was kind of like on that train a little bit more.
Oh yeah, I can see
But
that.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, but get a bunny.
But I remember I
It's
did specifically want a bunny as a child, and I told my parents, and then they got me a shirt with a rabbit on it instead, which is close. But they
Super
thought it was a
close.
hilarious joke too.
Just
They were
like
like,
it.
"Haha, we got you a bunny. Huh, get it?" And yeah, I got it.
Look at my friend got me
Hilarious.
this mug. This is what I have my coffee in.
Oh
with
wow,
the
yeah.
bunny.
I'm sorry, I can't. I have plans with the bunny. Yep, sounds good. I'd take it as a good excuse.
Oh, but having that would be
But-
wonderful. Yes. Anyway.
Yeah,
please.
I mean, you know, one day, they'll become best friends. But yeah, oh yeah, okay. So I know I don't want to take up your time, so we're wrapping up
Oh,
because
yes.
we're hitting the hour mark here.
Yes.
But I did want to ask if you had any other like advice on positivity or like things that
Ooh.
you know, just whatever thoughts on that as well.
Positivity. I love this topic. I think, I guess it's all about perspective, right? And I remember a friend of mine said it really well. She said, you know, sometimes you have to decide if it's more important to you to be happy or to be right. And I think of that sometimes in terms of positivity because I guess, or maybe it's like positivity, I think, is almost a nice side effect to having this kind of meteor experience of experiencing something that might be negative or darker or harder and going through the process of figuring out what is relevant or informative, you know, or expanding for yourself. And in the process of that, you often will discover some kind of positive wisdom or perspective in it. But yeah, I know that's a very general statement, but I can't think, I don't know, I feel
No, yeah.
positive and happy a lot about things. I have a lot to be positive and happy about, so.
Or yeah, no, I mean, I think that is a really good way of looking at it because, yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. Like, I think sometimes it gets a bad rap, like the word or even the term stay positive or anything like that, because sometimes it's used to minimize people's negative experience, or tell somebody to just like stop feeling what they feel. But the way you phrased it is very like clearly like from within and being your own perspective, which feels more feels helpful and not trying to project it on somebody else.
Yeah, that is
So,
the
yeah.
hope. It's so empowering when you discover that you can 100% decide how things are going to go in basically every situation of your life, because it's just up to you and your perspective. And if you want to lean into the positive side of stuff, then you go for it. And if you don't, that's fine too, but that's a choice as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, yes, that is true.
Yeah.
It's very gives a certain amount of like hope that no matter what is coming at you, at least there is some amount of control, because I think there's always a feeling like if you don't have any say, then it can feel like
Yeah.
can feel a lot more lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for imparting all your knowledge and
Yeah.
thoughts. It was so helpful, and it was so fun to talk to you.
Oh, it's so fun to talk to
wonderful
you. You actually, you make a good point. You don't, even though we're family and I've seen you at all these stages of life, we haven't had, what has this been? Like an hour plus conversation of just me and Sierra talking.
Yeah,
About life.
I know. What a joy.
About
And,
me, by
that's
the way.
No, and you're telling me stuff, and everything is great.
But it is
Yeah,
fun.
this is yes, and that's why I do the podcast, because I just want to talk to my cousins.
Love it.
I need an excuse. But yes. So any place that I know you kind of are you you wanted to keep the name separate and things like that. But anything you want to plug? Sometimes I asked if they're if they're like public facing people. Sometimes they want to say, oh, you can find me here. But maybe anything about women's workshop or any other things,
yeah.
or nothing at all. And that's totally fine too.
You're so
Keeping your options open.
No, I have two public Instagram accounts. One, so Women's Workshop, it's lovely. People are welcome to follow that. That's an open account that women who attend the workshops. So these are just like open talks basically that happen once a month. But separately, we have an Instagram account where we just post open-ended questions. And the idea is you can just talk about them with other people if you wish, or you can start your own women's workshop. And so anyway, ours is Women's Workshop HK. And if by chance you want to check out my bunnies, you can check out Bunny Choo Choo, CHEW.
Amazing. Yeah, good.
Or Sam Bunny
Good
Life,
branding.
which actually Eric maintains Sam Bunny Life's account, and I do Bunny Choo Choo, and I attempt to have more followers with my bunny. I don't know how one does that, but I don't know. I just post photos of Chewy, and it's really fun.
I mean, yeah, no, that's great. That's a whole industry, I'm sure.
It is.
One day they'll be
Oh
churning
my
in
God.
the product placement and the free bunny products.
It's so true. And it's really cool, actually. My Bunny Choo Choo, is friends. He's such a global, international bunny.
Oh, yes.
He's got
I'm
friends
sure.
with people all around the world. It's such a lovely community of cuteness. Oh,
That's adorable. I mean, I think that's the best part of social media is
Yes.
cute animal social media, because there's
Yeah.
hardly any, hardly any trolls in the comments, and Yeah, like I said earlier, I follow some dogs in Thailand, and it's like, wow, what a peek into the life of a Thai English bulldog, you know?
Oh, that is kind
So
of
I'm
cool.
sure people find the same about what a peek into the life of a Hong Kong bunny.
A Hong Kong bunny, or I mean, the other things that are kind of fun is like Melissa's like sustainable. What is it? Sustainable veggie.
Sustainable self.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, gardening.
I love seeing like that community. I've kind of checked a little bit sometimes who follows
Who's
her.
commenting.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
really nice. It's like this is what social media is
culture.
for. It's
Yes,
like it
I know,
teaches
yeah.
you lovely things about stuff that people care about and people are nice on it. It's fantastic.
I know. Imagine a world.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'll be like, oh, I don't know, my tomato doesn't look like that.
My pineapple
Oh,
tomato.
I think if you got a little more water.
Maybe add a little bit of this or that, bit of more of
Yeah,
that.
it's so specific.
Yeah, I like it.
But it's beautiful. Yeah, so, okay, Bunny Choo Choo,
Bunny Choo Choo.
Women's Workshop HK, you know, Sam Bunny Life if you're feeling
If you're
generous,
feeling
but
so inclined.
if you're feeling like, yeah,
You
you
really
needed
want to
some more
max
bunnies in
out
your
on
life.
the bunnies.
Right. Incredible. And yeah, well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your
you.
morning, and so great to see you.
Oh, this was so nice. So nice. Thank you for asking. I'm so flattered and this was really fun. And you were so prepared with the questions, by the way.
Oh, good. Thank you. All right. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to that interview with my cousin Natalie. You know, so happy to actually have a real therapist on the podcast and someone who has bunnies. So make sure to check out her bunnies on Instagram. You know, I follow them, so you might as well too. You know what I mean? Add a little bunny to your life. If I may, I just want to put a couple plugs at the end of this podcast. Make sure that if you like listening to Stay Positive, you like what I'm putting out there, share with a friend, send it to a friend, maybe email it to a friend. I don't know how you talk to your friends. If you can, that would be great. I love to get more people on board. I will be releasing more, even though I am a little bit busier these days, and I love to do it. So that's always fun. Leave us a review. Leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. Preferably 5 stars with a glowing sentence, you know, just a small suggestion. Also, subscribe. That way you'll make sure to get the newest episodes downloaded to your device. Is that what people say? So that you have it right when I release it, because who knows when I'm going to release it. I'm sporadic. And finally, if you can, I'd love for you to watch Close Enough on HBO Max. That's a new adult animated show that I'm writing for. I'm actually writing for a later season, but right now season 1 is available on HBO Max. So if you're looking for like more stuff to binge, it's written by a bunch of funny people, and you know, I just want to keep having a job, so please help me do that. And finally, I hope you have a good rest of your week. It's a pretty damn good week, so I can only imagine that is going to be more fun. All right, yay, bye.